can see my screen, right, Jason?
I can. Yep.
Okay. Terrific.
Yep. Just the intro slide. Yep. I got it.
Okay. All right. Give it a minute and then we'll start.
How many registrations did you end up with?
I think about close to 30-ish. I don't know if everybody will show up. So
Right, sure.
So we'll send them the recording.
Right, gotcha.
Yeah. Okay, here we go. I think it's just about time. Hey everyone, my name is Sureka Shetty and I'm Vice President at PK4 Tech. We are a time tracking company that works within the Salesforce ecosystem. You can track time on multiple platforms, either on mobiles, webs, within Salesforce, on Jira, within Slack, on a Chrome platform, and we keep coming up with new things to do. But ultimately, all of that data is within Salesforce, and that's the big USP that we bring to the time tracking piece, that everything's within Salesforce and you have the power of Salesforce for reporting, analysis, and integration. So that's a little bit about us. I don't want to spend too much time on what we do. I'm going to move on to what we are all really here for. And with that, I'll move to a quick introduction of Jason Liner, our main speaker today, and of MercuryGate, the company that Jason works for. Jason is Vice President, Financial Planning and Analysis at MercuryGate. They're based out of Cary, North Carolina. MercuryGate is a software vendor with a transportation management system that they work with most of the largest transportation companies in the world, I would think. And they essentially save time and money for shippers, brokers, and carriers worldwide. Since the start of 2021, MercuryGate has seen a huge growth, about 40% in its SaaS deployments, and they support more than 100 million shipments and 120 million freight transactions every year. And here's something I found quite interesting. They support over 1 billion logins every year, and I think that's fascinating. Getting to a little bit about Jason, he works across multiple disciplines, including finance, operations, product strategy, and marketing. He has had deep experience in financial planning and modeling, works across multiple business functions, and therefore comes up with great business solutions that work across multiple functions. Jason is a two-time graduate of the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. He lives in Raleigh with his family. And incidentally, he's the dad of 4 boys, including triplets. And I thought that was very interesting. He's published a book called Expecting and Experiencing Triplets. And if you find that interesting, take a look on Amazon and you'll have some information there. So with that bit of background, I'd really like to move on to our conversation. So Jason, couple of quick statistics, if we can start with that to give this some context, because we're basically going to be talking about cases and tracking time to cases here. Do you have an idea of how many cases that you deal with, that MercuryGate deals with on an annual or a monthly basis? What kind of numbers do you think we're talking?
Yes, sure. First of all, thanks for having me. Great to be here. Hope everybody's having a great day. Yes, we use, we're very heavy Salesforce users to interact with our customers. We run probably, I'm going to say 15,000 cases a year through Salesforce that are inbound cases directly from our customers. So in the 1,200-1,300 a month range in inbound cases, right?
Okay, that's good. And in terms of your support agents, that's how many overall hours do you think go into these cases?
Yeah, we've got so all in, we've probably got in the 30 to 35,000 hours a year range. kind of ballparking that, call it maybe more, 20 to 25 FTE. We've got really our support organization is set up in what I'm going to call tiers, like kind of tier one is the initial group that's getting those inbound cases. Some of it, we have some dynamic routing, but for the most part, if you've got a password reset or some simple case, those are coming into our tier one. And then we've got tier two and tier three, which are, I'll say, progressively more complex, more experienced agents and more complex cases that get passed along to those. So all in, we've got kind of between 20 and 25 full-time equivalents working that support organization in those three tiers.
Okay. Okay. And then you have, I know we've spoken before about this, you do have engineering or dev guys that get involved in cases as well.
Yes, absolutely. So some of those complex cases, as you mentioned, we're a SaaS company. So, some highly configurable software. And so sometimes an issue comes in as a case in Salesforce. Our support organization can't really figure out exactly how to fix it or what's causing the problem. It may be some configuration issue. Certainly, sometimes it ends up being a bug, a defect in the software. But sometimes we absolutely do get our development organization involved in researching and diagnosing that issue. And that looks like the case is still managed in Salesforce, and the support rep owns that case, but they may very well basically send that over to Jira, which is the tool that our developers basically live in. And that's an integration that we have. So the case goes over to Jira. So now you've got, in Jira, they call them issues, a Jira issue that is connected to the Salesforce case. So comments that the developer may make on the Jira issue will come back into the Salesforce case, but the developer never is in Salesforce. They stay in Jira. That's kind of their home. Okay. So, and we're able to pass information about that case back and forth, basically.
Okay. Okay. All right. Before I get into some more details, for all of the attendees, just a couple of things that I want to go over. We will have a Q&A at the end of this session. And if you have questions, you can either, I would suggest put that in the Q&A box that you'll see. And I will take a look at those and we'll go over that with Jason at the end of the session. So feel free whenever, as soon as you think of something, just go ahead and type that into the Q&A box and we'll take it from there, right? Okay, so moving on. So let's get back into the time tracking situation, Jason. So when you started with us, I think we started with you guys sometime, it's been over a year now. Yeah, so yeah. What was the problem that you had with the cases and that you were trying to solve with?
Right, sure. So I'll back up a little bit and give a little more context. We also, our professional services organization that's really implementing our software uses a separate system for project management called OpenAir. We did a migration probably a year and a half ago off of an older system onto OpenAir. So that kind of prompted some of the issues that we see. We use OpenAir to do all the billing of most of our project management work is done on a time and materials basis. But even if it's fixed fee, we're logging time and tracking all of that information in that OpenAir system. We were, at the time, we were also logging time. Our support organization was logging their time for cases in this OpenAir system. So what does that look like? That's very disjointed, right? They kind of live in Salesforce, but then every time they work on a case, they have to go over to this other system called OpenAir and create a task on the appropriate project, on a support project for that customer, and then log their time against it. So it was very disjointed. Part of the reason we have them logging their time is because some of that time is actually billable to the client. Okay. So that seems a little weird, right? Most software companies aren't billing for support time. So we've been around for 20 some years, and many of our legacy customers are on a support model that's really a time and materials support model. Okay. What does that mean? So if they send us a case that's a defect, Obviously, we're not going to charge them for that. But oftentimes they send us a case, an issue that they're having trouble configuring this screen to do what they want to accomplish, or it's something that, configuration issue. That for some of our customers, more our legacy customers or new customers, are just on what you would consider a normal support model that's included in their subscription fee.
Right.
But some of these older customers, and we've got a lot of them, we've been around for quite a while, are on a time and materials support model. So we need to track their time and then bill that time back to that customer for that support issue.
Okay.
We were using this open air solution for that billing of time. So again, it was really an efficiency problem that we had. We're asking our support organization to live and breathe in Salesforce, but go track your time in this other solution in order for us to bill it, our accounting group to bill that time.
Okay.
So one problem is the efficiency, obviously, but the other, it manifests itself in lost revenue, right?
Right.
If you're a support rep, and you're working, you're busy, you're working on cases all day. What if you forget to go log that time in this other system?
Right.
Maybe you jot it down on a sticky note or a notepad, and at the end of the day, you have the intention of going in and logging all of your time, and you forget, you miss a sticky note, whatever. So as we kind of rolled out this open air solution, we realized that that time and materials revenue, which for our company is a substantial amount of revenue, it was decreasing. When we would go to dig in to ask questions to find out what's going on, it was kind of a black hole, frankly. We did not have good reporting around those hours and why the revenue was going away, frankly.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. And what about the dev group that was working in Jira? Did they have to track time in Jira? Was that what they were doing?
Right. So they've always logged their time in Jira as a kind of a standard mode of operations against the issue that they're working on. The development leadership group has always looked at their time. Some of that time, development time, is capitalizable. So those in accounting kind of understand what that means. You get to defer those expenses. But then because sometimes they would work on billable cases, we needed them to log that time in open air. So they had to double enter their time, both in Jira and in open air. There is no connection, integration between Jira and open air. As you can imagine, those hours never reconciled. We had people trying to reconcile those hours, and we were losing hours. We would find hours in Jira that were not logged in open air. And those are billable hours, and yet we can't bill them because they're not logged in the right place against the right task. So very, very cumbersome and inefficient. Okay.
All right. So that's when we started out. And let's talk a little bit about how we've implemented the time tracker for all your various teams. And I don't want to get into the software, but we'll at least show a couple of screenshots of how things are going. So if we can talk about, just give us a little bit about how your support team, because they are the first people that get the cases, what they do and how things work for them in terms of time tracking.
Right. Well, again, back to the efficiency issue we were trying to solve. They live and breathe in Salesforce all day long. They're in Salesforce, going to all these different cases and working on them, communicating back and forth with the customer. So we needed a solution that kept them right there on the case, and that's what TimeTracker does for us. Right. They're working on the case. This is a screenshot, I'm going to say, of kind of the left side of the case screen. So all the details they're working in, and we'll show that. I think we've got a different screenshot, but kind of, I'll say lower left, just outside of this screenshot, is really the component is the term that Salesforce uses, a widget that is literally right there on the same screen that they can just log their time. And so we track a couple of different work types. Is it diagnostic or issue resolution? So am I trying to identify what the issue is, or am I trying to actually solve the issue? And so that's this work type and Notion. And the date, which obviously defaults to today, makes it super simple for them to go in and log, in this case, an hour and 15 minutes I worked. So we keep them right there on the case. So as they're doing their work, effectively the last thing they do before leaving the case is they just log whatever time they log. That might be 15 minutes or it might be 4 hours. but it's super simple for them right there on the case.
Correct. So this is what the agents are doing. And then the dev guys in Jira. So maybe we can talk a little bit about the dev team and how they're, what goes back and forth between Salesforce and Jira.
Right. So conceptually, conceptually, same thing. I mentioned earlier that the case, if the development group needs to be involved, we send that case over to Jira. It's tied now to a Jira issue, and the developer lives and breathes in Jira. So we don't want them going into Salesforce and logging in and logging time in Salesforce. We want them right there where they live and breathe. So they're on the Jira issue. They can log their time through the integration that we have with TimeTracker with PK4. It brings that time back into Salesforce and ultimately rolls it up exactly as if a support rep logged it right there on the case. Same exact result. I can bring those hours in or that time logged in from Jira back to the case.
Absolutely. So this is what the developer would do inside of Jira. They would just put their time in as they normally would, which creates a Jira work log. And very quickly, if you look at something like this, this is where it would, on a case, you could actually see the details of somebody working within Salesforce. And then if data came over from Jira, then you would have that there so that you actually saw that on this case, there's a combination of people working inside Salesforce and something that's coming from Jira as well. So that's how you got that into that. Okay, and the third piece is the PSA team, the professional services guys, and they are using the web app when the TimeTracker web app, right?
Right, exactly. And so that's where occasionally, not nearly as often as the support or development groups, but occasionally we do have cases being worked by our professional services group. Usually that's when they just implemented this new customer. And for the first few months after implementation, they're the ones that kind of have all the knowledge of how that implementation went. So if a case comes in for that newish customer and it's a configuration issue, oftentimes the support group will go back to the original project manager that did the implementation, ask them some questions, and sometimes they contribute to that case. So they're also not in Salesforce every day, but there is a very simple web app that we can give them that all they really need to know is the case number. And so they can basically plug in the case number, today's date, it defaults to today's date. They can say, I worked for 30 minutes on this case, and it comes right back into Salesforce with all the rest of the time on that case. So it makes it very easy for us to report on it. You know, all of the standard Salesforce reports and dashboards we use point to the TimeTracker details object. That's what this is showing. You know, this is one particular case that's got, looks like 8 or 10 TimeTracker detail records. Some of those came from various places, right? The 3 that are not blocked out, I've got the names scratched out just to keep those folks anonymous. But the ones that are scratched out names, those are support reps working in Salesforce. If that work log comes from Jira, it looks basically the same. It just has a different name on it, and the name is automatically generated from that Jira integration. So I can then report on, and ultimately, if this is a case that's billable to the customer, I can bill these hours out by simply extracting reporting out of Salesforce, passing that over to my accounting team, and have them bill out at the end of the month for all of these time and materials customers that I've got.
Okay. And you also, I know since you're a finance guy, you have a lot of interest in reports and dashboards. So what kinds of things are you seeing? I mean, this is a very interesting dashboard in terms of how many hours your tier 3 support people are spending.
Right. Yeah. So we obviously forecast the revenue on this time and materials piece. Not only the revenue, but the non-billable time, hours being tracked against non-billable cases, it gives us insights into what does it really cost me to support that customer. So I can see how many hours are logged in my support organization, even if it's a newer customer on a normal, what I'll call normal standard support model. I can take their annual subscription fee and allocate a portion of it to supporting them. But I can also understand what does it cost me to support them. So I can see kind of literally a P&L at the customer level. This is one of a kind of a component that comes off of one of our dashboards that looked at billable hours by user. So I left the user names off, but basically each color is a different person. And so you can see we're running somewhere in the range of about, for this group, my tier 3 support, about 60 billable hours a day, 50 to 60 billable hours a day across that group. And we track all of that. We understand what our billable rate is for each customer, because it can vary by customer. So it gives me really good forecasting of my revenue and just insight into my customer support organization to know what types of cases people are working on. We have different dashboards around the type of case, things that end up as a defect, things that are configuration issues, simple things like a password reset. I've got all of those dimensions at the case level, and I can see how long does the average configuration type case take to resolve, to diagnose and then resolve. So it just gives me a really good level of insight into the business that we just simply did not have before we implemented TimeTracker.
Okay, and that brings something to mind, this thing about the password resets. It's amazing how many cases and tickets are just about password resets. It's just incredible.
Yeah, simple things, right?
Always. So yes, anything else? What are you looking at in terms of, has that revenue leakage issue been sorted out now with the TimeTracker?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's sure. So we have absolutely gotten all the insight and visibility we need into the business. So we know the revenue in this time and materials bucket certainly came back up to, it's actually higher than it was before, because we have that level of detail in tracking the time. Longer term, ultimately, we are migrating a lot of those customers off of that time and materials support model to a more traditional support model. But even still, that doesn't change the fact that we want to have that level of visibility into our business to understand where our organization is spending time to support our customers, whether it's directly billable through T&M or a normal model that's just billed as part of their subscription fee. So it just gives us lots of insight into the business, lets us make more educated decisions around the business. Staffing, resource planning is much better with that level of visibility. So as we bring on new customers and grow, we have a much better sense of projections of our cases and the types of those cases and the time that it takes to resolve each of those types of cases. So it gives us lots of insights for sure.
So even in terms of, as your business grows, how many more support staff you need and all of that to get an idea.
Absolutely.
Okay. All right. So that's really been fascinating to see how you guys do stuff. Let's see if there are questions here. Okay. There's a question here from Franklin. Is it a sustainable mechanism to charge customers for support in addition to licensing fees?
Well, sure. It's a great question, and that question may have come in before I made my last comment. We are absolutely migrating those customers from a time and materials model to a more subscription fee based and a more traditional. We don't really like the time and materials thing, right? It's a burden on our accounting group. Customers don't like it because it's a variable support charge every month. So sometimes if they've got a lot of issues that month, nobody really likes that model. So we're absolutely working with those customers, those older, more legacy customers, to migrate away from it. I don't think it's ultimately sustainable. I'm sure that we'll always have some customers on it, but both customers and ourselves, we would love to kind of get off of that model for sure.
So I'm assuming those were at the time when you had a in-premise model, that you would have had the customers that were doing support as a chargeable thing, I'm assuming. And then they moved to SaaS, but you still continued billing.
Right, exactly. Many of those, that's exactly the case. Like I said, they're virtually all of the customers that we've added in the last, I don't know how many years, several years, are all on just an inclusive, normal, traditional SaaS model where support's included in their subscription fee.
Okay. And there's a question here from Sean. He is asking, has the time tracking in Salesforce helped in saving costs in any way?
Well, sure. I mean, what's absolutely more efficient. So if you think about, I used to be asking my support organization to uh, go over to another solution to log their time every day. I don't know if that was 10 minutes, 15 minutes a day that they were losing because it was just an inefficient way to do it. So certainly they are more inefficient, which means my support reps can do more, keeps me from having to hire more support reps. So from that perspective, absolutely, it saves cost and from that perspective.
Okay, and this is a question I need to answer. It says, per your slide title, time tracking on cases, is that specific PK4 time tracker technology component? Yes, that is a specific time tracker component. We have multiple Lightning components. The one that MercuryGate and Jason's team are using is what we call a manual tracking component, which means that support agents are able, at the end of the time that they spend on a case, put in the actual amount of time that they use. We also have another component that will automatically track the time on cases. And then there is another component called the live tracking component, which you click on a start button when you start working on a case and then click stop at the end of the time. So it tracks the time between the stop and start. So there are 3 different kinds of technology components there. One more question for Jason. Jason, I guess you used a consulting firm to get Jira work logs into Salesforce?
No, we did that all internally. So one of our development leaders was very good on the Jira side. We have a Salesforce administrator who helped a little bit on our side, and frankly, the PK4 folks were very helpful in working through that Jira integration to bring the work logs back. So they helped with that technical side of it. No, we did not need to get any outside consultants involved with that.
Okay, and Tim asks if you have a full-time Salesforce admin in the house.
We do. Yes, we do. We at the time that we implemented, we were actually kind of in between Salesforce admins, so that was a little bit interesting. I've got a little bit of a Salesforce admin background, so I know kind of enough to be dangerous. I won't say that I was able to drive all of that, but between the PK4 folks and some of us internally, today we do have a full-time Salesforce admin.
Okay. One more question. In your case, are you only using the Salesforce case object, or are you also leveraging the Salesforce activity task object?
Yeah, we are only using the Salesforce case object with respect to logging time against the case. So Reka, you can speak to. I know PK4 has the capability to do log time against activities and task objects.
Absolutely. In these MercuryGate case, like Jason said, we're only using the case object, but we do have the ability to work off of activities and tasks as well. And the other thing that I wanted to point out is that these components, the 3 Lightning components that I was talking about, while in the MercuryGate case, they are on cases, they can actually work on anything within Salesforce that has a view ability. So it could be on opportunities or accounts or case or contacts, work orders, anything that you have within Salesforce that has a view on that object, you can include these Lightning components there, whichever ones you choose. So absolutely, they can work on any of the Salesforce objects that are in there. Is the time tracker support tracking time? Yeah, I think I just answered that. Yes, it can work on any other objects in Salesforce. You can choose to have different Lightning components on different objects. That works too. We actually have some customers who use multiple objects on the same, multiple Lightning components on the same object. When I say that, what I mean is, for the most part, they use the automatic timer, or they might use the live tracking component. Sometimes if they forget, then they might go back and use a manual component to add time when they've forgotten to do that. So sometimes people put two components of the same object. Did you use anything other than Salesforce for cases earlier? And how has Salesforce worked out in that context, Jason?
Yeah, we did use a prior system before I got to MercuryGate. When I got to MercuryGate, which was a little over 2 years ago, we had just started using cases, migrated case management into Salesforce. We've got the community portal, so it allows our customers to log cases directly into the portal, comes directly into Salesforce for us. And I've used Salesforce for case management support organizations and several other organizations that I've worked at prior to MercuryGate. So I'm a fan. It's a good kind of central repository. It's very configurable. So at each of the companies I've been at, we've had it configured in different ways to make sure that it kind of meets the needs of our organization. But it's I'll say continue to be a work in progress over the last couple of years. But we continue to hone it in and really manage cases really well in Salesforce. So I'm a fan.
Great. I think we've taken all the questions and we are really on time here. So
did we get all the questions?
Yeah, I think we covered everything. Yeah. So if there are no more questions, I want to say, Jason, thank you so much for taking the time to do this. Really appreciate it. And thank you everyone for joining. I know there were more people that signed up. So for the people that weren't able to make it, we definitely send recordings of the webinar. So you'll have that. And we look forward to, and if you have any questions, my email's right there on this slide. Feel free to send me a note and I'll be happy to answer any questions that you have. And look forward to speaking with you all soon again. So thank you and have a great weekend. I know there's still a day.
Thanks, Sareka, and thanks everybody for joining, taking some time out of your busy day. Hope this was helpful.
Take care, everybody. And bye.